I took a look at all the roles in Wolvesville and graded them on creativity, balance and fun. This may sound familiar if you've seen the 2022 roles ranked videos, but if not, creativity, balance, fun together form the CBF rating, which is score out of 30. Now with that list, here is the top 10 best roles in Wolvesville. Spoiler, the Avenger is not in the top 10. But after number 1, I will tell you why the Avenger is not on it, and I will also quickly tell you the flaws of the CBF metric.
Number 10. Gunner.
Perhaps an unexpected role in 10th, but it will not be the biggest surprise. The Gunner is one of 4 roles with a score of 26 out of 30 and has an 8 on creativity, a 10 on balance and an 8 on fun. The easiest here is that the Gunner is a perfectly balanced role. The Vigilante is just not in comparison to the Gunner. In certain contexts, the Vigilante is sufficient and maybe the better option, especially when someone is in control who likes to play the game more safely, but this is then also the bigger flaw of the Gunner, that shooting a villager can have catastrophic results. The 8 on fun is mostly subjective of course, but as Gunner you can say anything but that your role is boring. The 8 on creativity is the hardest to explain because the Gunner belongs to the pre-log roles, meaning it was there pretty much from the start. Philip, the main developer of this game, has told me that the Gunner was introduced when only the regular werewolf, the doctor, the seer and the villager were existent, meaning there is not much reference to use. Since this role added extra kill power and was first in the village killing category, I will give it an 8, but not higher since it's not really a creative masterpiece or anything.
Number 9. Ghost Lady.
This role is a creative masterpiece, although it does not add a new category of villagers quite yet. The Ghost Lady actually belonged to the earliest roles of the role card update and was tested in early 2022. By that time, there were already a ton of roles in existence, hence it needs to be said that the Ghost Lady is quite unique. As you may know as well if you saw the 2022 roles ranked videos, playing as Ghost Lady is something different and perhaps it is my second or third favorite role to play as. Anything below a 9 on fun would be criminal, but I give it a 10. The only aspect where the role lacks is balance, since even though it is hard to compare against Red Lady and Sheriff, it still feels a bit too strong. Perhaps a slight nerf is required, but then that goes at the risk of taking away fun and or creativity.
Number 8. Werewolf Berserk. Frenzy time.
With the Werewolf Berserk you can have a guaranteed kill at night, and before the existence of this role that was not a thing for the werewolves at all. I would argue that this role is so unique in fact that it has no proper role tree and that the Shadow Wolf was just combined with it because both had no other sensible combination. A 10 on creativity is deserved for that achievement, and especially nowadays in a time with 80 plus roles, it is quite that sight to see a 2019 role being so unique. On balance it scores a 9 out of 10 because balance wise I ought this near perfect, but unlike the Shadow Wolf, the Frenzy is not guaranteed a use since the Berserk needs to live in the night with the Frenzy. This is also something that takes away from the fun factor for me since I tend to get checked night 1 when I am Berserk. Of course this is a very much a specific curse on me, but from a more rational standpoint the Berserk is decently fun to play with, but absolutely not my favorite werewolf role. It do be satisfying to see more than one player go down because of you, but it does not offer a lot of playstyles, at most good mind reading of protective roles.
Number 7. Cursed.
The Cursed is the final role with a score of 26 out of 30 and this might be a controversial pick here. Balance and creativity heavily carry this role, with the Cursed scoring a 10 on both aspects. Although the Cursed is nothing new to the Mafia genre, that is also not the context I used to judge roles. The Cursed was the very first dynamic role in Wolvesville, it added a totally different element of team change and it is still till this very day a very useful role for setup creators. Balance is harder to judge with the Cursed, but in contrast to the Grave Robber it is not as RNG based and the Werewolf fan takes away from the major pro of the Cursed, aka team swapping. Then it really is the fun that takes away from this role. In the past I like to play with this role, but as time progresses, strategizing as Cursed gets more and more limited till the point where it's just a waiting game. Well, that is what some players at least argue, and this is reflected by the amount of Cursed that flee. The cursed is super simple, but balance and especially fun are extremely dependent on the given rule set.
Number 6. Jailer.
The Jailer might be a bit low on this list this time around, since it sat on the 3rd place in 2020. The Jailer's quote-unquote weakness is creativity, even though it is hella creative with an 8 out of 10. It introduced role blocking. It was the 3rd time we saw a chat at night after the dead chat and the werewolf chat. It protects and it can kill. Killing is nothing new. And that is also why this role sits on 8 out of 10 instead of 10 out of 10. That sounds picky, but considering the fact that pretty much every new role at that time had so much potential to be unique, and there were also a lot of roles that did fulfill that, I am way more critical on old roles when it comes to creativity. The Bodyguard, for example, scored a 5 out of 10 on creativity since the Doctor already introduced protecting. Back to the Jailer, the fun element deserves a 9 out of 10 since this role has so much versatility, gives you a sense of power and is truly capable of carrying a village. For balance it scores a 10 out of 10 since it is perfectly balanced in my opinion with the Warden. The Warden can select 2 people after all, but you have more control over what happens and you can keep selecting the same target if the situation demands that.
Number 5. Shadow Wolf.
For the time this role was added, which is early 2020, a year with pretty much no new roles but already a lot to choose from, the Shadow Wolf really brought some fresh air to the game with its ability to hide votes and double the werewolf votes. It is balanced since the ability is strong but can also only be used once, and in contrast to the Berserk you can at least guarantee that you use the ability, unless you really die night 1. Hiding votes is something that was unseen before, although admittedly the hide votes option in custom games also rolled out in 2020 or even 2019. Only the fun element sticks at 7 because it's quite bland with strategies, and even though a village kill during the day is more impactful late game, you are more likely to use it really early on to at least get something done with it.
Number 4. Junior Werewolf.
The Junior Werewolf is the first role ever that can take someone down with them, and that changes the way you play with this role. In my opinion, no werewolf sided role is genuinely as much fun as the Junior, because you can play aggressively, you don't really need to worry about your own survival, and you can just start confusing the village right away if you'd like to. With the Junior Werewolf the meta changes so now and then because your aim is to deal damage and people will try to read that and die before you are the last remaining werewolf, which is basically your weakness. A 10 on creativity and a 9 on fun are the results of this, and the balance it scores a 9 too. This one is debatable since I gave the Kitten Wolf a 10 and the Split Wolf an 8, but the Split Wolf perhaps should be lower than an 8, and there are arguments for putting the Junior Werewolf at a 10. In the end, I consider the Kitten Wolf with all nerfs in the past as the most balanced role here, but it is close to the Junior Werewolf. This makes for a 28 score. Now we head into the top 3, and if you want to do any guessing on what roles will feature, pause the video right now. We will continue to number 3 in 3, 2, 1. Alright, number 3 is
Corruptor.
Yes, it's the Corruptor. You heard me right. This belongs to my favorite solo killers to play with, as it's satisfying to see people roles fade away and see your claim space increase, if you play it correctly. It is slow, that is a con, but it pays off when that kill happens. This role requires a bit more skill than other solo killers since you need to read well who claims what and what your victims could have been so that you can step in their feet. The Corruptor shines foremost in creativity and balance though, both with a 10 out of 10. Like the Shadow Wolf, the Corruptor introduced a new mechanic of hiding roles upon death and making those players not revivable. Once again, this also came to custom games as a setting. Balance-wise, this role is perfect. I would argue it is well balanced with the Evil Detective, and the Illusionist is not well balanced, but that is on the Illusionist side, which might be considered as the weakest solo killer out of all of them.
Number 2. Grumpy Grandma.
This surely will surprise you, because why is an obscure role like Grumpy Grandma so good? Well, it checks pretty much everything that is needed in the CBF rating system. In fact, it's almost perfect with a 29 out of 30 score. This role introduced the 4th category of villagers, aka voting manipulators, and was for a very long time the only role that could mute players a day. This role has some strategies with it, as you can surprise the solo killer in a 1v1 by muting them if they forgot to kill you, and you can also just use your ability a lot. Balance wise it lacks a little bit, but not severely, as it's stronger than a Mayor and Baker for sure, due to the additional ability of muting a player in the chat. And fun it is to play with this role. You will often appear as RRV and you have the power to silence someone who is annoying, evil or just a jerk in general. As long as you don't game throw, of course. As I mentioned before, you can be that surprise factor. Be the clutch player in a 1v1 muting the solo killer, but you also need to be careful by not muting wrong players because it may cost you the voting session and maybe even the game.
Number 1. Fool.
The Fool is the best role of Wolvesville, period. Yes, it appears in some card games and in games like Town of Salem too, but if we compare it with the Villager, the Werewolf, the Seer and the Doctor, aka the first roles, this role is the most unique out of any, and I would argue that it's still the most unique. How come? You're the only role that needs to die in order to win. Surely, some roles will also come in their strength when they die, like Kitten Wolf, Avenger and the aforementioned Junior Werewolf, but for them it is still a player less on their team. For you, it is an instant victory, quite the opposite. The Fool is perfectly balanced. I would like to argue that the Fool is pretty much essential for any setup and is the only thing that makes voting phases spicy. Playing as Fool is a lot of fun because there are countless strategies to achieve your objective. Most of the times you find yourself balancing werewolves, solo and village, but sometimes you can also get lynched when werewolves forget about you. When the village is in a hurry and decides to take you on, or even in a cowboy fight against the solo killer. You know what? Let's give this role a 30 out of 30. It's just perfect. Now what's more, I want to accentuate that the CBF is not a perfect model for judging roles. History tends to play a big role in the creativity grading. The Avenger is maybe even the perfect example of what I mean. In case you don't know, the Avenger is my favorite role, and it actually still is my favorite role even though it is not in the top 10 best roles according to the CBF rating. The Avenger was added just one update later than the Junior Werewolf, and since the Avenger is exactly the Junior Werewolf but village-sided, it receives a 1 on creativity, and hence a score of just 21 out of 30. What if the Avenger came before the Junior Werewolf though? Then the Avenger would perhaps have shared a first place with the Fool, and the Junior Werewolf was far away from this top 10. If you have any ideas on how you would rate roles, let me know in the comments, along with your top 3, 5 or 10 favorite roles if you like to share that. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, then check out this video here on the end screen. I'm 100% convinced that you will have a blast with this video. You can also subscribe and then turn on the bell to get future videos as well. I will see you later, and don't be a traitor. Goodbye.